GTA 6 costs $80 in America. Simple enough, right? But here's the question nobody's actually asking. How many hours of your actual life do you have to work to afford that? Because when you run the numbers, some people are paying for this game with 3 hours of their time, and other people are paying for it with almost a full week of theirs. Same game. Same price tag philosophy, completely different reality. Let's actually do the math, country by country. Before we get into this, I want to be transparent about how this video works, because I think that actually makes it more interesting, not less. I'm using published minimum wage figures for each country, converted to US dollars, and dividing the local GTA 6 price by the hourly wage. Let's start with the number basically everyone already knows. GTA 6 Standard Edition costs $79.99 in the United States. The federal minimum wage has been stuck at $7.25 an hour since 2009. That's not a typo. It genuinely has not moved in over 15 years. Do the division, and someone earning strictly federal minimum wage would need to work just over 11 hours to afford this game. That's a full standard workday plus a bit more. Now, I want to be fair here. Very few Americans are actually paid the federal floor. Many states have their own higher minimum wages, and the real average hourly wage in the US is significantly higher, closer to $30 an hour once you look at broader labor statistics. At that rate, the real hours needed number for the average American worker drops to somewhere around 2 to 3 hours. So the federal minimum wage number is almost a worst-case scenario. Not the typical experience, but it's still the most consistent number we have to compare against other countries, so we'll use it as our baseline throughout this video. Now here's where the story gets genuinely interesting, because a few countries completely flip the script. Take Switzerland. There's no single national minimum wage, it varies by canton, but in a city like Geneva, minimum wage sits around $30.48 an hour. Even though GTA 6 costs more there in raw dollar terms, roughly $98 for the standard edition, when you divide that out, you get just over 3 hours of work, less than half a standard workday. Switzerland has one of the highest sticker prices for the game on the entire list, and yet it might be one of the most affordable places on Earth to actually buy it. The Netherlands tells a similar story. Minimum wage there sits around $16.70 an hour, and the game costs approximately $91 through the Euro pricing tier. That comes out to about 5.5 hours. And the UK is a really interesting case because minimum wage there just jumped significantly. As of April 2026, the national living wage rose to roughly $16.82 an hour for workers 21 and over. At a local price around $92, that's also close to 5.5 hours. So across several wealthy European countries, we're talking about GTA 6 costing less than a single standard workday, even in places where the sticker price looks relatively high compared to the US. Sitting right in the middle of the pack, we've got Germany and New Zealand. Germany's minimum wage is around $14.86 an hour, and the game sits in that same Euro pricing tier around $91. That works out to roughly 6 hours, basically a full standard workday, give or take. New Zealand's minimum wage is about $13.38 an hour, with the game priced locally around $79. That's roughly 5 hours and 55 minutes, almost identical to Germany. Interestingly, even though these are two very different economies on opposite sides of the planet, this is actually a nice reminder that minimum wage laws and game pricing don't always move together in obvious ways. Sometimes very different countries land in almost the exact same spot. But now let's talk about where this really shifts, because this is the part of the video that actually matters most. Remember that pricing chart floating around showing GTA 6's cost by country? India actually had one of the lowest sticker prices on that entire list, around $63 for the standard edition, cheaper in raw dollar terms than the US, UK, or almost anywhere in Europe. But here's the problem with stopping the analysis there. Minimum wage floors in India vary dramatically by state and by sector, and in many regions they sit at just a few dollars a day, not a few dollars an hour. If you run that same division, local price divided by local minimum wage, a $63 sticker price can translate into multiple full days of minimum wage work, not hours. In some of the lowest wage regions, we're talking about something that could stretch toward a week's worth of labor for the exact same purchase that costs a Swiss worker about 3 hours. And this pattern isn't unique to India, it shows up across a lot of countries with lower minimum wage floors, including parts of Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Eastern Europe. The sticker price might look cheap in dollar terms, but the real cost, measured in actual hours or days of a person's life, tells a completely different story. This is genuinely the most important number in this entire video. The country with the cheapest dollar price is very often not the country where the game is actually the most affordable. In a lot of cases, it's the exact opposite. So why does this gap exist in the first place? Game publishers, including Rockstar, generally set regional prices based on a mix of factors: local purchasing power, currency conversion, existing market norms, and what similar games have historically sold for in that region. The goal is usually to make the price feel roughly comparable to a typical AAA game purchase in that market, not necessarily to make it cost the exact same number of work hours everywhere. The problem is, wages move a lot slower and a lot more unevenly than game pricing does. So even when a publisher tries to adjust the sticker price downward for a lower income market, minimum wage in that same market often hasn't been adjusted nearly as aggressively, which is exactly why the hours to afford gap can still be enormous, even in countries where the game itself is nominally cheaper. So, stepping back from all these individual numbers, what's the actual lesson here? A sticker price alone tells you almost nothing about whether something is truly affordable. Switzerland looks expensive on paper and is actually one of the easiest places to buy this game. India and several lower wage countries look cheap on paper and can actually require days of labor for the same purchase. Real affordability is about the relationship between price and income, not the price by itself. And that's true for video games, but honestly, it's true for almost everything. So here's what I want from you: drop your country and your rough hourly wage in the comments, and I'll actually calculate your personal hours to afford GTA 6 number and reply directly. I think this could turn into a genuinely interesting comment section if enough people play along. And if you want a deeper, more precise breakdown for one specific country, say a full regional breakdown just for India or just for the US, let me know, because I can absolutely build that out as a follow-up. Subscribe if you want more of these data-driven breakdowns. See you in the next one.